You know, some people put the video on and then they step out.
Exactly.
Honorable Memusi, oh yeah, there you are. Honorable Memusi, can you stay on with us on video? Can you speak so we can test your mic? Vice Chair, can you hear us?
I think it's connected to the audio.
Connecting to audio. Connecting to audio.
Good morning to all of you. I hope you're. Can you hear us? Miss Millie and Vice Chair, are you able to hear us?
Millie, are you able to hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you. Maybe
Vice Chair, can you hear us?
I'm not muted.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good
Morning, Millie.
morning.
Vice Chair, can you hear us? Memusi? Honorable Memusi, can you hear us? Connecting to audio again. Seems to be having a problem. Vice Chair, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, that's fantastic. We're about to start. Since we called His Excellency to allow us to have a meeting to discuss the Middle East conflict, and he graciously agreed to have a physical meeting as well as an audio meeting. This meeting is for us, basically, as the Kenya-Israel Friendship Group, to understand what's been happening in the Middle East outside of all the media coverage that we've been seeing, and to also voice whatever we have that we feel that we need to voice collectively and as individuals. There was a lot of hue and cry on our wall, and a lot of people were concerned about the conflict, the loss of life, and they felt that we should have a meeting as the Kenya-Israel Friendship Group to discuss it, and His Excellency Ambassador Oded Joseph agreed to have this meeting with us. So this meeting is for us as the Friendship Group to basically understand the conflict and to ask any questions, to engage with His Excellency on the conflict as the Friendship Group. So I will leave it maybe to the Vice Chair to add something, and then Honorable Millie, and then we can let the Ambassador give us a brief, and then we can ask questions.
Please.
Great. Greetings, everyone. Your Excellency, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity, and it's good to see you again. And as the Chair has put it, members have been concerned. We all are concerned. As you know, when a relationship starts, you see a friend going through something, you want to know, understand what is it that they are going through. Even though we might not have much that we can do, but it will be good for us to understand what Israel is going through, and how is this going to affect many other things. So basically, we just want to know from you what is going on. Is there anything on our end that we can do? So that's it.
Honorable
Thank
Millie?
you.
Good morning, and I want to thank Your Excellency the Ambassador and our Chair, Honorable Esther Passaris, for organizing this meeting. It's important for us as a friendship group, first to understand what is going on from the horse's mouth, but also just to stand in solidarity. And of course, as Honorable Memusi says, so that even when we speak from a position of information and authority. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to welcome the Secretary, the Treasurer, Honorable Ivo Barra. So we basically just started by thanking His Excellency that for allowing us to have this meeting. Quite a number of our members had asked for us to have a meeting to discuss it. We are the Kenya-Israel Friendship Group, and we felt that as friends of Israel, we needed to understand what is going on and know where we can be of assistance as friends of Israel. So maybe you'd like to say something before I...
Yeah,
It's okay. You can leave it or you don't. It's okay.
the sixth floor. Thank you very much. Just as my colleagues have said, there has been a lot of things flying all over the social media, which has been very, very disturbing. And when this came up, that we need to really understand what it's all about, then I thought that it was a wise idea, particularly with the friendship group of elected political leaders, so that we also understand what exactly is going on from the horse's mouth. And that's why we are here. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your Excellency, I'd like to give apologies. I mean, Honorable Abdi Karim, who was the one who was most affected by it, and he's in traffic on his way, but he's going to try and join us through Zoom. We also have apologies from Honorable Rehema Deldeza. She's at her school's Parents' Day, and Honorable Sophia Abdi Noor, who is in Lamu. But they will be able to get a briefing from all of us once we are done. So thank you very much once again for allowing us this opportunity to discuss the current conflict in the Middle East.
Absolutely. Thank you very, very much, Honorable Pasaris. Thank you very much, the Vice Chair and Honorable Millie and the Treasurer and all of you all here. Vice Chair, I hope you could join us also with video. It will be.
He keeps getting on.
It gives a feeling of more warmth when we see each other. So if you could join us with the video, it would be very much appreciated. I don't know whether you can hear us.
Yeah, there you are.
Good.
You know, you look very good,
Exactly,
so don't worry.
yeah,
You look good.
I'm trying to do other things, but I'm following.
Okay.
But yes, I can.
Yes, don't save us
It will
from
not
your
take you-
beautiful face. So it will be nice to have you join.
Thank you.
Anyway, I
Thank you.
first and foremost really want to thank you. Thank all of you. I think the whole essence of having the Kenya-Israel Parliamentary Group is exactly that. That you know that we're in better times and sometimes in more challenging times. We are here together to discuss things, to clarify the matters, to make sure that all of us, and definitely yourselves, are briefed, because we are very much appreciative of the fact that that under your initiative we have established this friendship group. You know, the support within the Kenyan Parliament is very meaningful for us, and naturally questions that are being arised following different types of events happening in Israel in our region are more than natural, and I think that we should have, and I want to see this meeting as a first, but definitely not the last meeting, of just ongoing regular meetings between us to discuss the situation on the ground, and more important, to discuss what is it that we could do together. What is it that we could do together in many spheres? Naturally, what brought us today, and I was, I think, Honorable Pasaris, I think from day one was happy to hold this meeting. It's really, I was available, and I will always be available for this important group, for briefings and for any other discussions that you might have. I understood that there were various questions on the wall of the friendship group. This is more than natural. And unfortunately, reviewing the local media and also the regional media, one could not get the right picture of what's happening in our part of the world, because unfortunately the way things are being covered in the local media and the regional media is very one-sided. I'm allowing myself to say there is a very superficial way of covering the situation in Israel, assuming that one side is the strong one, the other one is the weak one, and it's always about one side victimizing the other. This is a very superficial way of looking at what is happening in the Middle East, and I would say it even is lacking seriously intellectual honesty. And this is what I hope to clarify with all of you today. Of course, there are always are open questions. No side is perfect, and I would say something at the outset. Wars and conflicts are ugly. There is no beautiful face for wars. No beautiful face for wars. regardless of which side you are. But I think the main point that I would want to portray forward today is that what we have been seeing in the last 10 days in Israel, 11 days in Israel, is not about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. It's not about Palestinians being our enemies or the other way around. It's about a terrorist organization accompanied with other terrorist organizations that are controlling the area of Gaza. And of course, I'm mainly regarding Hamas. Hamas is the main terrorist organization that fully controls Gaza on the account of the Palestinian Authority, weakening the Palestinian Authority. The Hamas terrorist organization is being assisted by additional terrorist organizations that work from Gaza, such as the Islamic Jihad, and they're being supported by countries, regimes like Iran, in terms of empowering the military capability of this terrorist organization. And what we've been seeing in the last 11 days, which began a few weeks earlier, is a deliberate incitement that has been done by the leadership of the Hamas in order to inflame the situation on the ground. And they've been utilizing the holy month of Ramadan, the so-called Nakba Day, and other events that took place in the last month. Now, the first question being is, what happened now? Why now? Why is it that the Hamas has decided to have another wave of terrorism? So the first and immediate answer for that is they don't need excuses or good reasons for initiating another wave of terrorism. They've been initiating waves of terrorism since even pre-independence of Israel. We have been challenged by terrorist organizations, not necessarily Hamas, because Hamas was established later. But we've been challenged by different terrorist organizations, including Hamas, many, many years back. If you look at the charter of the Hamas, it's very clear in terms of what they want to achieve. They want to have an Islamic rule all over the territory of Israel. From their point of view, and again, it's in their charter, is to wipe off Israel from the maps altogether. So the ongoing goal of Hamas, and which justifies from their point of view to initiate waves of terrorism against Israeli civilians, is first and foremost because their main goal is to see us being wiped out of the map. The second and more immediate reason for them to wage this last wave of terrorism was internal Palestinian politics. They were hoping to seize control and to set the agenda of the Palestinians altogether on the account of the Palestinian Authority. They were hoping to gain more power through elections, Palestinian elections that should have taken place these weeks. And contrary to the regular and easy way out to explain why Abu Mazen decided to delay those elections, his easy way out is to blame Israel for everything. But the truth is that the Abu Mazen was terrified from these elections. He was terrified because he was fearful of the fact that Hamas might gain more popularity and control. And he decided to delay these elections, again, publicly saying it's about Israel. But it had nothing to do with Israel. So the Hamas that was hoping to gain more popularity through elections saw that Abu Mazen decided to strike that off or to delay those elections. They've decided a different tactic. Also for them, what is the easy way out? The easy way out is to blame Israel for everything that is happening. And they began a campaign of an incitement that is basically no other but fake news, distortion of the situation on the ground, and lies. I have no other ways of putting it. They utilized the holy month of Ramadan, began a campaign as if Israel is preventing from Muslims to go and pray in the mosques on the Temple Mount. There is nothing more ridiculous than saying that claim. Anyone who looks at the history of the land of Israel, looks at the history of Jerusalem, would notice that the only time that the only democracy in the Middle East, the only time that there was full freedom of worship, full freedom of exercising your own religion, specifically also on the Temple Mount, is when the Jerusalem fully was under the rule of the Israeli the Israeli government and the Israeli people. This is the only time when all religions had full and free access to all the holy sites, and they could have, and they still are, free to worship their own religion. So this is I think a very important point to understand, because again I urge you to look at the history of the Jerusalem as our capital. When we recaptured our holy city and our holy capital in 1967, again at the war that was forced upon us, we had control over the holy sites of Jerusalem. We regained our control over these sites. One of the first decisions that at that time our defense minister, Moshe Dayan, who also used to be a very well and famous warrior, he used to be also our chief of staff. One of the first decisions that he has done as a defense minister was to give the so-called the key to control and to facilitate prayers of Muslims on the two mosques they have on top of the mount. He gave the key back to the Waqf. We had full control. We could have say that we will be the ones to facilitate the prayers on this mountain. But we decided, because we understood there are two important mosques on that Temple Mount. We understood that it's only right to allow the Waqf to continue and facilitate those prayers, even though the Temple Mount is the holiest place for Jews. This is where our temple was. It was destroyed. The second temple was destroyed in 78 AD, and then all Jews were exiled all over the world. So for many Jews, this is the place of the temple of our temple. But we realized what every normal person would realize, that since our temple was destroyed and two mosques were constructed on that mountain, you do not go and destroy them, God forbid, because this became the third. It's not for us; it's the only and first, most holiest place in the world. For them, it's the third after Mecca and Medina. So we understood that it will be only right to allow the Muslims to continue to utilize those mosques and to pray. And from 67 till today, the Waqfs are the ones who are facilitating the prayers. The Israeli authorities are there to maintain order, to make sure that these things that the prayers are happening in a manner that is without disorders. Unfortunately, within the Waqf, and some of those prayers, and I'm coming back to the events of the last 10 days. Those who were instigated by Hamas decided not to use the prayer place, this holy place, as a place of prayers. They've decided to stockpile rocks and stones. They've decided, after they were specifically called by the leadership of Hamas, they encouraged them, buy knives in 5 shekels, which is about $1, $1.50. Buy those simple knives in order to sabotage, in order to hurt Israeli police and Jews who want to come to the Temple Mount, to visit the Temple Mount. So they have deliberately instigated the situation on the ground, deliberately in order to inflame the situation on the ground, to portray an image as if Hamas and not the Palestinian Authority are the ones who are taking care of the Palestinian needs. And this outcry of let's save Jerusalem. Save Jerusalem from what? From what? To save Jerusalem from what? I think this is a question everyone has to ask yourself. And trying to portray as if Israel was the one to prevent, as I said, is ridiculous, because we've done the opposite. The time that you have seen in the news those images of Israeli policemen using force against prayers on the mosque, again the images being distorted in terms of what happened there. But when the Israeli police acted on the Temple Mount against those extreme prayers, it was when they decided to utilize the stones and the rocks they've stockpiled in order to attack Jews who were praying on our holy site on the wall, or the Wailing Wall, what is known as the Western Wall, which geographically is of course much lower than the Temple Mount when the mosques are. So they were throwing stones endangering the lives of Jewish prayers praying in the Western Wall. And they attacked the policemen that are on the Temple Mount in order to retain order. They attacked them by stones, attempting sometimes also to try and use knives and stab Israeli policemen. So I would ask any responsible government, what would they have done when in holy sites you have mobs, extreme prayers that are there not in order to pray, not in order to respect this holy place, but in order to create violence, to attack policemen and to attack Jewish prayers. What would you have done? And I'm sure that any responsible government would have utilized and asked their policemen to act forcefully in order to retain order, and that's exactly what they've done, using non-lethal weapons. So there was not even one person that was, God forbid, killed or even seriously injured as a result of the actions of our police on the Temple Mount. But that it's continued to instigate, the situation continued to inflame because Hamas still utilize these events in order to portray, and not only the Hamas, unfortunately we have leadership like Turkey. The president of Turkey, Erdogan, for him, he is part of this machine of inflaming the situation on the ground, portraying a false picture as if Israel is trying to prevent Muslims from praying on the Temple Mount. And again, this is one of the biggest lies that one could experience. We, on the other hand, took some de-escalatory measures. Some of the events that took place were on our National Day, the Jerusalem Day, when we mark and celebrate the fact that we have recaptured and we came back to our holy city of Jerusalem, regained our control over the whole city. So this was a national day for us. And what are the de-escalatory measures that we have taken on that day because of these events? One, we have prevented not from Muslims to go to pray in the mosque of the Temple Mount. We have not prevented from them. We have prevented from Jews to go up the mountain, even though it's the most sacred place for the Jews, on that specific day, because we understood that might create a friction. What is the interpretation that the Hamas has given to our action, to our de-escalatory measures? Probably the interpretation is that maybe Jews should not be allowed at all to be on the Temple Mount. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. So one measure that we're taking, as I said, is to prevent from Jews to going up to the Temple Mount, not from Muslims. They were able to continue going and to do their prayers. The second de-escalatory measure that we've taken at that time was to demand from the marchers. You know, in every day on National Day, on Jerusalem Day, there is a traditional march of flags. The Jews are marching across the different places in Jerusalem to mark this important day for us. And the police have demanded from those who organized the march this year to reroute the march, in order for them not to necessarily pass in places where they thought there is a bigger chances that we would create friction with Muslims in Jerusalem. So we have changed the route of this march. We have prevented from Jews to go on the Temple Mount, and we were trying to ask the religious leaders to try and calm down the situation on the ground, also us sending de-escalatory messages. But for Hamas it wasn't enough, because they wanted the opposite. So they continued to distort the situation on the ground, and to complement what they have done in Jerusalem, the first thing they have done is attack Jerusalem, yes, the holy site of Jerusalem, by missiles and rockets. So the first missiles were sent towards Jerusalem, and then since then, in the last 11th day, they have sent towards civilian areas, deliberately towards civilian Israeli areas, more than 4,400 missiles and rockets. More than 4,400 missiles and rockets. Deliberately against civilian areas in Israel. From within civilian areas in Gaza, which is another point. So when we say that the Hamas is responsible for at least 2 war crimes, what we mean is that they deliberately send missiles and rockets against civilians in Israel, in order to hurt civilians, in order to see as many Israelis being killed, in order to destroy as many assets as possible, as many private houses as possible. And they're doing it using their own people, their own Palestinians in Gaza, using them as human shield, because they are doing it from residential areas, deliberately from residential areas. So at this point, I would ask, what would every other responsible government would have done? What are our choices at this stage? What are our choices? I think every responsible government would have attacked back. And this is exactly what we have done. And compared and different from any other defense force that I know in the world, we have managed, because we understand the dilemma, because we know that Hamas deliberately places and houses its headquarters, its storage of arms, its storage of weapons. They deliberately do it within residential areas, under mosques, under hospitals. Acknowledging this fact, we have managed to develop in the last few years an experience of striking the right balance between attacking back in a very pinpoint manner, in a very surgical manner. We are attacking military assets and sites of Hamas, the terrorist organization, and at the same time minimizing as much as possible, when it is possible, minimizing as much as possible the collateral damage that might occur definitely on civilians and on the civilian assets. And that is exactly what we've been engaging in the last 11 days. So you have been seeing, and I want to go to a few of the examples that I'm sure that you've seen in the press, and maybe when we open this discussion or open for questions, I think we lost the vice chair. Maybe you want to raise it, but I think some of those images that I know were out there in the media. There was this famous building that was that we attacked more than one building, much more than one building. Okay, but I will refer to one because the one was out there in the focus was on that building. Reason being that this was so-called also it housed also, which is true, it housed also the media outlets. What many people, I haven't seen it in all the press, but it also housed regular citizens. So the question was, Israel is bombing media outlets. Israel is bombing residential areas. But no one is telling the real reason why we have bombarded this building. The reason was that this was the headquarters of the Hamas intelligence. This was also how they've housed some of the weapons in that house. And what we have done in this experience that we have managed to develop in the last few years, we have warned in many techniques and ways. We have warned the civilians and the media that was housed in that place that we are about to bomb. We gave them enough time to evacuate the place. And no one, not even one, asked themselves the question, how is it that after Israel bombarded this building, how is it that you didn't hear about even one person, one media person, one citizen that died or was even injured? You've seen the massive building being collapsing. If the intent of Israel was to strike against civilians, how is it you have not heard about one person? This was midday. Not even one journalist. Why? Because we are taking, when we can, contrary to any other military force that I know in the world, told me one defense force in the world that acts in the manner that we are acting. Not even one. Unfortunately, we have developed these techniques because we are challenged, and we are trying to find this balance between making a proportionate response to attacks against us in a manner that, as I say, minimizes as much as possible the collateral damage, but at the same time reacts to attacks against us, utilizing and exercising our right for self-defense. No other government would have done different. That's exactly what we have done in that building and in many other buildings. This is not the only building. We will also manage to attack this network of tunnels, what we call the metro. We think about metro, right? Allowing passengers to travel from one side of the city to another side of the city. But for the Hamas, this network of tunnels is military. These are military tunnels. They have created these tunnels that some of their entrances are on the Israeli side, which they've utilized in the past, and they were hoping to utilize this time in order to send terrorists to attack civilians in our territory. These tunnels are being utilized as command and control centers underneath the people. Of course, again, as I said, another example of them utilizing their own people as human shield. these tunnels are being used for storage, for weapons. So as part of what we have done, we have attacked these tunnels too. By the way, again, and I'll talk about international aid that we were attempting to facilitate to allow into Gaza in a minute. But I'm also saying in the context of tunnels, because these tunnels were constructed by utilizing finances that came from the international aid community. Rather than utilizing cement and funds to benefit and to improve the lives of the Palestinians themselves, they've been channeling the cement and the funds in order to build these terrorist tunnels. So for us, it's naturally a justified military target that we have attacked. And successfully we've managed not all of the network, but a good chunk of this network, giving a real blow to the terrorist infrastructure of the Hamas. Another measure that we've been taking, we understood that sometimes the leadership, the terrorist leadership, has to be targeted personally, because we know they are the ones who are instigating and they are the ones who are responsible for this misery, both for Palestinians and for us. So we have targeted a few of them, and these are the measures we have taken, and I think these are measures that we have very much insisted on making sure that they're proportionate to the attacks against us, and that we are taking all the measures possible, because not always it is possible, but we have taken all measures possible in order to minimize the collateral damage. Now, there is another issue I hear. How is it that how can Israel explain with such, after me explaining to you that we're doing our best for minimizing collateral damages, how is it that on the Israeli side you have only 13 people who were killed, and on the Palestinian side you have more than 230 or 40 or whatever the reports were given by the health authorities? But again, did anyone ask who those people are, the ones that were killed, and how they were killed? So the vast majority of them, around 150 or 160, I don't remember what are the updated numbers, until yesterday it was more than 150. These were terrorists that were killed as part of our attacks, because we attacked the sites where they launched the missiles, and we attacked these tunnels, that many of those terrorists were underneath those tunnels at that time. So the vast majority of those who were killed were terrorists. And there's another big portion, unfortunately, of people that were killed because of misfires of the Hamas missiles and rockets. And I will show you in photos very, very soon. Rather than those missiles to go all the way to the Israeli side, they fell on the Gazan side. So some of them were, so a big number of those who were killed by all the own Gazan and old Hamas terrorist missiles and rockets. And of course, there were also some that, as part of the war that we have waged, unfortunately, when you need to attack in a very populated area, and I believe that some of them were also hurt as part of the activities that were done during these 11 days. But the ethical responsibility for the lives that were lost both on the Israeli side and on the Palestinian side, the ethical responsibility has to be solely put in the doorsteps of the Hamas, because they are the ones to initiate it, and they are the ones who are deliberately utilizing their own people as human shield. And Israel here was exercising its right for self-defense. And again, I want to say another thing about why is it that in Israel there are only 30 people who were killed. So one of the reasons for that is, thank God, Israel has managed to develop what is known as the Iron Dome, a very sophisticated system that is able to intercept the missiles and rockets of Hamas. Very effective. We have to apologize for having a responsible government and good minds that have been able to develop good systems? Should we appease the joy of the press to see more Israeli being killed or more houses to be destroyed? Because this will make someone feel better? This is madness. This is madness. And I expect our friends to understand it. The only reason why we had a relatively small number, and again, every person that dies on the Palestinian side and on the Israeli side is a tragedy. But the reason that you know about relatively small numbers is not because the Hamas was not aiming to have more casualties on the Israeli side, more people being killed or injured or more assets being destroyed. The only reason for that is because we have this very effective system that manages to intercept the vast majority of the missiles. Those who, it's such a sophisticated system that it disregards those that we calculated will fall on an open area in Israel. So we don't deal with them. The system is focused on those that they intercept, that they will fall on and fall against Israeli civilian areas. So the vast majority we've managed to intercept, but still many of them, because they've been challenging compared to the last time that we had the last time we had a wave of terrorism. This time Hamas decided to try and challenge our system, firing at least anywhere between 100 to 200 missiles and rockets at the same time. Deliberately, because they are getting more sophisticated themselves. They're getting help from the regime of Iran. So they've been challenging. And again, thank God our system is effective enough, not hermetically. We still have people injured. How many of this press showed the people that were killed in Israel and areas that were destructed in Israel? I haven't seen, I think in the Kenyan press I almost haven't seen that. Now I'm not in the business of competing who is more miserable. This is not the issue. But I want people to understand that the fight is not against the Palestinians. They are not our neighbors. We have a separate conflict with them that we have to reach a lasting solution. There are different ways of doing that. Both sides have not succeeded yet to reach this lasting solution with the Palestinians. That has to be addressed, but not on the account of understanding that at the moment there is one terrorist organization controlling Gaza, and they do not want to limit themselves to control just Gaza. They want to control all the areas of the Palestinian Authority, on the account of the Palestinian Authority. And to have this another Islamic regime, another small Iran, yes, another Islamic regime that wants to kick out the Jews out of their own homeland. This is the issue. And whenever countries do not condemn Hamas and do not pinpoint on the fact that Hamas is responsible for these war crimes, for these two war crimes, I think they're giving it legitimacy to continue to act. And thank God Kenya, as our friend at the Security Council, was very clear to condemn specifically Hamas for firing missiles and rockets against Israel, and saying there is no justification for attacking civilians. And we thank Kenya for that position. We think that more could be done to make sure that people understand that Kenya supports Israel's right to exercise self-defense. And we understand, and like us, we share the same notion. We do want to see things being de-escalated and reaching a lasting solution with the Palestinians. We share this. But we need our friends to pinpoint, not to allow this distortion and lies on the media to show just one side, giving no context of what really happened. I want to mention at least one more aspect, and that is that during the last few days, Israel was twice trying to facilitate from humanitarian aid, international aid, to enter to Gaza for the benefit of the people of Gaza. Trucks were on their way to enter to the Gaza Strip yesterday and 2 days ago. Trucks were on the way. They were stopped. By whom? By whom? By Hamas. What have they done? They bombed. They attacked with missiles and rockets the crossing points. So the drivers that were supposed to facilitate to bring in the lorries inside the Gaza Strip with international aid, of course, they stopped themselves, and we didn't allow that to happen because they risked their lives. So Hamas was preventing from their own people some international aid. So I think people have to, everyone who faces terrorism in different ways and faces, And Kenya, unfortunately, is one of those countries. Kenya and Nairobi specifically suffered from terrorist actions. You suffer from insurgencies coming from your neighbors in the north. You know what it is to fight against terrorism. So I think the only way to overcome terrorist organizations is by having the international community being united against it. And I think people have to understand that what has happened in the last 11 days is another wave of terrorism initiated by one organization. There's no other way of describing it. There's no other way of describing it. And the tragedy is for both the Palestinians and the Israelis. Palestinians were being hijacked by their own so-called leadership. And of course, Israelis are originally the target of this terrorist organization. I'll stop here. I'll share a presentation, because I want, some of the things it's easy sometimes to see. I wanted to bring also some short clips, but I think I just want to show. This is just can you see, Honorable Millie? Can you see the shared screen?
I can see.
Yes. Good. So what
I can see.
Yes, what you can see now. These are. I don't know whether you can see my. Can you see the pointer? For my mouse.
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm showing you now, these are the missiles and rockets being fired from Gaza towards Israel. Okay, they're coming from the western part of Gaza, and what you see here is from the southern part of Gaza. And this is the Israeli Iron Dome system that, as I said, has managed to intercept most of those missiles that were, according to the analysis of the system, were about to land on Israeli civilian areas. Again, we haven't managed to intercept all of them, and people did die, including Arab Israelis, father and a daughter, that were killed from a missile. They were Muslims, not Jews. Arab Israeli. We had some foreigners, one from India, one from Thailand. We had a 5-year-old child, an Israeli, that was killed because the missile somehow managed even to penetrate a fault that they had in the window of the sheltered room. It managed to penetrate it and to hit directly this 5-year-old and to injure his mother very, very badly. So this is all look at the area that was covered by the missiles. It's practically most of Israel, and of course Jerusalem, which was the first place to be targeted. About 2 million Israelis were impacted by this war. They had to be, anyway, it depends how close you are to the Gaza Strip, but they had to be ready anywhere between 15 seconds to 45 seconds to reach to a safe place, to a sheltered place. Once this missile there was an alert that the missile was launched against a specific destination. So 2 million of Israelis were under ongoing fear, and they had to be ready to disrupt their lives because of this missile attack and terrorist attack. So you can see here a few examples of that. Again, I don't want to show. I'm not even competing on misery. This is not the issue, but I want people to understand the situation that it is in Israel. This is a good example. This is the one site where the terrorists are launching and firing their rockets and missiles. You can see where they do it from. Deliberately. Look how dense this area is. So they go to those places within their own people to fire and launch those rockets. Why do they do it from there? Why not from a military base? They know why. Because they know we will be hesitant and we'll be more careful to attack back. They know that we give enough warning. So it doesn't only allow the residents and the media outlets and journalists to evacuate, it also allowed the terrorists themselves to evacuate. Show me of any other defense force in the world that tactically makes this so-called tactical mistakes. You warn your enemy in advance that you're about to do something. Show me another defense force that does it. I don't think there is. But we do it not for the sake of the terrorists. We will deal with them separately. But for the sake of those civilians that are being caught in the middle, deliberately. for those poor journalists, that none of them show the Israeli perspective at all. And this is what frustrates me, and this is why it's such important that our friends and yourself as a parliamentarian group would be the one to balance it, to express support and solidarity with Israel, to show the other picture. And again, I said it at the outset, there is no beautiful face for war and for conflict. Nowhere, under no circumstances. We are not different from that. Nothing good happens when you have to use military force for the sake of the people, wherever they are, under any conflict there is. But what we have done was exercise our basic right to defend our own people when we were attacked by terrorists. And I think we've done it in a manner that took, as I said, we've been trying to be as much as effective as possible to degrade the capabilities of Hamas, and on the other hand, to be considerate or to find the ways to minimize the collateral damage. And the last thing I want to say is, because the main difference from yesterday and today is that there is a ceasefire, and it is exactly what it means, a ceasefire. We don't know, and there are no other conditions that at the moment have been attached to it. For us, this is yet to be examined, and the jury is still out of how effective this ceasefire will be. Because we have no illusions that even after we have managed to damage and degrade a lot of the military assets and targets of the terrorist organization Hamas in Gaza, we have no illusion that they have changed their character altogether, that they have changed their goals and objectives. We have no illusions for that. We have no illusions that unless something drastic will happen, they will continue to try and find the ways to empower themselves again, to produce more missiles and rockets, to get more sophisticated. We have no illusions. So this is a ceasefire, and recognizing and understanding that if they try again to attack Israel, there will be again, we will respond again. And we know that even if they'll be deterred, it will be deterred. We have no illusion that this deterrence will be for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. We don't really know how long. But it's only a matter of time where we would expect them to try and engage and initiate another wave of terrorism. And we will be ready for that too. But I thought it's important that you would have at least hear the more accurate and detailed Israeli perspective. And I'm open for comments, clarification, and please, I invite you to ask tough questions.
Yes.
We are in an intimate group, if not here, where else? But I encourage you, ask any provocative, hard question that you want. We are not perfect, but
Yes.
I think it's fair to say that nothing from this perspective was being introduced in a decent manner in the local press.
Can we maybe have Millie back on the screen properly? Honorable Millie, given your seniority as a member of parliament, could we start by maybe giving you an opportunity to ask those tough questions that...
But you're not eating, and
we're going to eat. We don't want to.
I've been talking so much, so you can eat.
As soon as we're done,
We've been listening.
Yes, Millie, His Excellency has
Very
said
shy.
he's waiting for those tough questions. But one of the things that I picked was the lasting solution. They want a lasting solution. Everybody in the world wants a lasting solution. So maybe because nobody can ask a question tougher than Millie, so can we just hand over to Honorable Millie?
Please.
Thank you, and thank you, Your Excellency, for that comprehensive, exhaustive presentation. And I just want to say it's actually unfortunate that members have not been able to log in because there were many questions that were being asked in the group. I probably don't have very tough questions. I'm only hoping that there's a de-escalation of the violence and that normalcy returns. Some of us, many of us actually in Kenya, from the Christian perspective, also hold Israel very dear, and so when we see escalation of violence, it is alarming, and we therefore just hope for de-escalation of violence. Perhaps what I would want to give one comment and just one clarification. The comment for me is that the presentation you've given is very good, and it actually shows the perspective of Israel. And the only challenge is that this needs to go out more, because what is out in the media is very one-sided, and so I think you need to work a lot more as a country on information sharing and managing the media, because you are actually having a challenge in terms of the propaganda war that is going on, and really the half information that is reaching out there. Then the only clarification that I want is, because I've actually had the explanation and the reasons that you have given for this war, the need for the Hamas to delay elections and all that. But I was just wondering, because I missed that, you may have said it. If I've done, then you apologies. I just wanted to know that even when people have a reason, there is usually a trigger. So what was actually
Usually,
the
sorry?
trigger? Can you hear me?
There is usually a trigger.
What was the trigger, the specific trigger for this specific round of violence? Because it's been a while since there was this magnitude of violence. So what was the actual trigger? Because usually a trigger is something sometimes it's a small issue, maybe two people disagreeing or something. What was the actual trigger for this one?
Yeah, I think I referred to it, but I'll repeat it again. I think it's an important question. But let me start with the challenge of the propaganda, or the challenge of the media. We are doing our best, and I think there were many Israeli spokespeople who were available, spokespeople from whether they were regular citizens that were impacted by this wage of terrorism, whether these are military people, whether these are politicians. All of them were available. We had regular briefings. But I'm saying, unfortunately, sometimes not deliberately, or maybe not deliberately, but sometimes for reason I do not fully understand. It depends what those media outlets decides to pick. And let's talk a little bit about Kenya. Unfortunately, in Kenya, I've seen too many media outlets that what they have done is not necessarily original pieces of their own journalists, but they have picked from AFP or from CNN and so on, and for some reason they have picked those pieces that were very one-sided. I could criticize here AFP separately, but at least AFP, when they cover the issue, they have like maybe 10, 15, 20 pieces a day on the region. So someone might get, and I think it wasn't even true about AFP, but he might get more balanced view if he reads all the pieces that the AFP has decided to publish that day. But if the nation here, for example, or the citizen decides to give this AFP piece, that all it has done was showed how a house of a Palestinian was destroyed. He's not saying necessarily by whom. They didn't investigate it. Maybe this was destroyed because of this mistreated rocket and missile of the Hamas that fell on the Gazan side. They're not mentioning why and where. They're not saying that on the other side there are civilians that are also being attacked. No one is giving the perspective. So when the nation decides to use this specific piece, they're not giving the readers any true perspective of what's happening. And unfortunately, the other side also, as I said, deliberately, as part of the propaganda, they just distribute lies. And when they are repeated by the media, you don't get the right picture. What is it that we could do? In my humble capacity, we're trying, of course, to utilize our social media platforms. And myself, I've been interviewed to few outlets in Kenya and in the other countries that we're accredited. But I think another crucial component could be getting your support, because I think I was happy to do this briefing from day one, but being in touch with us, getting some more perspective and more information, in order for you to maybe to be outspoken about the situation, whether it's in Parliament or in other places, I think this would support us very much. And I'm at your disposal to brief and to give and to forward talking points and information that could be needed in order to assist you, to assist us in portraying, I think, a more honest picture of what's happening in our part of the world. And I'm saying my main criticism on most of the outlets, including in Kenya, is that some of them, because maybe it's the easy way out, they see much more material that describe things in the way they are. But I think one has to be very, very thoughtful, especially if you're a media outlet, in what I call intellectual honesty. And intellectual honesty demands you, as a responsible journalist, to really investigate, to give a fuller picture, to give a fuller perspective, not only one side. And even if you decide to give one side, at least call the Israeli embassy, ask for their response. What do they have to say? And this, I think, did not happen enough. We tried to balance it in the few interviews that were published today also. But again, this is what we could do on our part. And again, I'm urging and calling your support to find ways, whether it's in Parliament or vis-a-vis the media, to also, because when I speak, I'm naturally I'm not objective, but I think when our friends speak, it will be perceived in a much better manner. Now, to your question about the trigger, I think I mentioned it. There's one ongoing trigger. They don't need reminders, new excuses. This is there. That's part of the charter. But and that is, as I said, part of the goal is to see how Israel is wiped off the map. But you are not asking about the ongoing trigger. You're asking about the immediate trigger. And the immediate trigger, to our understanding, it was that they, as I said, they were frustrated by the fact that the Palestinian Authority, Abu Mazen, decided to postpone the elections because they saw the election as another tool to gain more popularity and to gain more of their agenda vis-a-vis the Palestinians that are living not in Gaza, because in Gaza they have full control. The Palestinian Authority has nothing to say on Gaza. They have no say in Gaza. So this they are very conquered, but what they really want is to expand their control over parts of Jerusalem and the West Bank. So when Palestinian Authority decided to delay the elections, they found themselves in a dilemma. How do they create this image, or how would they strengthen their own position within the Palestinians who are living in the West Bank? And they've decided that the easy way out, especially during, and this also is relevant to the trigger, especially during the holy month of Ramadan. When is the easiest way to inflame people? To inflame Muslim prayers? The easiest time is during the holy month of Ramadan. So they utilized the timing. The fact that the elections were delayed, the fact that it was the holy month of Ramadan, and the fact that there was what they call the Nakba Day, which is our Independence Day. Yes, this is the disaster day for them. So they utilize all this to trigger this round of terrorism. I hope I've clarified your question.
Thank you.
Thanks. At least I am happy to hear that there has been a ceasefire. But my fear throughout, as I was going through a lot of media articles, was somebody driving the narrative over religious differences. And by extension, that created a form of even other religions, Muslim in particular, to be sympathetic. to what was happening. And that was serious because
Agree?
it's been a long journey that you've had to reclaim Jerusalem and all that, and I don't think anybody wants to go back to the Arafat times and all those things that we used to read when we were young. But this must come up very clearly at every given opportunity that
Can't
it
hear
is
you,
not.
Honorable Igwe.
I'm saying that this should come out very clearly at any given opportunity that it is not religious. It is not against the Muslims.
Absolutely.
It is not. But that is what they are trying to drive on.
Absolutely.
And if allowed, that can go into a full-blown problems that we had, a terrorist problem across the world. When anything that is anti-Muslim is supposed to be destroyed. And that is what I would hate to see. Therefore, I am happy that there is an effort to create this ceasefire and that you are now beginning to talk so that the people can actually see the reality of what it is. So thank you very much. I'm happy that you have so much, advanced technology that we don't have in the world. I remember when I was young, in the Tepe story, I used to read about the Tepe story and how you were able to rescue these people from the terrorists and the one that was here at Westgate and all that, and we still admire the advancement of technology to control terrorism. Thank you.
No, I thank you very much, and I think you're very right. I think again, Hamas deliberately is trying to inflame the situation on the ground, within a context within a religious context. And you're very right. Israel is not against Muslims. We have many Muslim friends. And going back to the question, Honorable Mili, about the trigger, I think maybe one of the issues that might have frustrated also the Hamas is that we have just strike peace deals with some of our Arab friends in the Gulf. So for them to try and put a religious context to this conflict, I think they were trying, and to some extent they managed, to put these two countries or these countries in the Gulf on the spot. Why is it, they had to justify, why is it at this time they've normalized their relations with Israel. But I think again, as you've said, this is far from being true. We have many Muslim friends, many Arab friends. There is no conflict between Jews and Muslims. We have good memories. My parents they raised up and born in Egypt. We have excellent memories from the friendship they had with Arab and Muslim neighbors, and it's true for many places. It's true today. I would also ask something else. In the holy city of Jerusalem, which we've regained control over, there are many Christian holy sites, right? I don't need to educate anyone here. Why is it that we don't see conflicts there? The Israeli police is doing exactly the same job that they're doing on the Temple Mount. They're retaining order to make sure that freedom of worship. Did you ever hear about clashes between Christian prayers and the Israeli police? Why isn't that happening? Because there's no one who is inflaming deliberately the situation on the ground. There's no one who is spreading lies as if Israel is preventing Christians to come to the Holy Sepulchre and pray, or to go along the way of the Via Dolorosa. I'm saying again, since Israel regained control over all Jerusalem, it's only and solely capital. The freedom of worship, the freedom of religion has never been as it is under our control. Jews were not allowed to pray in the holy sites when these areas were under the control of Jordan. And if God forbid it will ever be under control of any other factor, Jews will not be allowed to go. So I think this has to be understood. And again, I want to separate two things. I understand that you're saying that you're very pleased with the ceasefire. We are not as optimistic as you might be, because the ceasefire to many people is like in the context of ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinians. Again, for me, this round, the regular or the average Palestinian and the average Israeli were not the ones in conflict. This ceasefire, the jury is still out about this ceasefire, because this is, at the moment, the Hamas, who was hit, understands that he needs to recover. So they agreed to a ceasefire now, or they ask for the ceasefire now, because they want time to recover from what we have managed to, the successes that we had against their military targets. But I'm not optimistic that this will last forever. Because I don't see the Hamas has been changing, and it will not change unless the international community is part of what should be done. We'll make sure that they understand that no country gives legitimacy to a terrorist organization to act. So this is one component, international community being united against terrorist organizations wherever they are. And hopefully one day the Palestinian Authority will be able to regain control over Gaza. Now it's not under their control at all. Abu Mazen has no say in Gaza. No say in Gaza.
We've just been joined by Honorable Beatrice Adagala. Can you please?
Hello, welcome.
Can you please put your video on? Beatrice, are you still there? Mheshimiwa?
Thank you, Chair.
Can you put your video on so we can see you?
Good morning to all.
We can see we can see your mobile, but thank you for joining us. And I saw you join quite a few minutes ago, and you probably heard. Do you have a statement or question for the ambassador before we wrap up?
Okay, I've been following. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for the good work that you are doing. The good relationship between Kenya and Israel. I also want to say I visited Israel before the COVID-19, and I was very impressed with how.
Okay, we seem to have lost the connection.
Maybe
you should stop. Maybe you should stop.
Can stop when.
Can you stop?
Honorable Beatrice, you can stop while talking. Then you can move again.
And even as the reception that we see in the country, it's sad to hear of the latest with the network, please.
Okay. All right. I think.
The network is not ideal, and unfortunately you have muted yourself.
Yeah, I think what you can do is if you can find a place where you can stop, then we can give you a chance again.
Okay.
Maybe stop traveling, just park your car and then make your contribution.
I'll do that.
Okay. Your Excellency, first of all, I want to say that the one thing I celebrate is the fact that you have a ceasefire. Even though you're not optimistic, I think we all, as the world, would like to see that ceasefire actually is honored, and then both parties can sit down and come up to with some kind of solution going forward. Because the picture that everybody is carrying is that little girl that's shouting, saying, "I'm only 10." And then knowing that quite a number of young children were targeted. Now, I've also heard you say that Hamas positions itself in densely populated areas, so sometimes when you're trying to take them out, of course we will have casualties, and at some point some of their own rockets returned back to their own people. So for me, what I'd like to say is to congratulate Israel, the Iron Domes, and what they've achieved, because I'd hate to think of, if you didn't have that solution, where would Jerusalem be today? Because they were firing into Jerusalem, into Tel Aviv. So what would be the state of Jerusalem today had you not been able to intercept all those missiles that were coming at you? So as the Kenya-Israel Friendship Group, I mean, our position is that we are here to support Israel. But when we see something that we don't like, we also want to be able to say something about it. And so far in this conflict, we can see that you, besides intercepting all the missiles coming into Israel, you also were concerned about the aid that was going to go into Gaza to help the people there. But going forward, I want to ask you, what is the solution? Because there's always been this talk of one state, two state. And the issue is the land, the settlements. What is Israel's position for a permanent solution? Do we have a permanent solution? Is there a way that we can actually say that, are you comfortable with the Palestinian state, and recognizing a Palestinian state, and then being able to live together in harmony? Because without that, every few years we will have this hate continuing to boil, So what is the solution there? Because if we don't have a way to find a lasting solution, then Israel will continue growing in its might in terms of military might, and you will continue having your neighbor as an enemy, and that in itself will not bring lasting peace. And since Israel itself is home to Jerusalem, where all religions converge, right? And then also, I heard this on CNN, that in Gaza, or in the settlement area, on the one side you've got very good water for the people to consume, and on the other side even the basic necessity like water is not there. Now that could be propaganda, because I've seen you in our own country go to our orphanages and ensure that they have clean, safe water. So I want to know, what has Israel done to improve the quality of life in Gaza, in the West Bank, and how can then we see how that can come out, because that's not coming out. Right now you're looking at the oppressor. You're looking at somebody that has taken land that you shouldn't have in the first place. So when we move away from all that, what is your opinion about the one state, the two state as a solution going forward? Because even in Kenya we see land is very emotive, so how can we, what is Israel's position on Palestine becoming an independent state?
Well, thank you. Again, I want to thank you for the support, and I think the support of this friendship group means a lot to us. And thank you for expressing it just now. And as I said, we're very appreciative of this. I also think that what I've said is, I think I was trying to highlight three components of the way we have acted in the last 10 days, 3 or 4. First, you have mentioned yourself, is that yes, we have been utilizing our right to exercise self-defense in order to protect our own civilians who have been attacked. 2, which is not less important, we have done it in a manner that we have tried at the beginning to de-escalate the situation, but when missiles continue to be fired against Israeli civilians, we have taken action, but we have taken action in a way that we have minimized as much as we could the collateral damage. And I don't want to compete again between this photo of this 10-year-old girl shouting, "I'm only 10, I'm only 10," with a photo of the killed 5-year-old Israeli from the Israeli side. This is truly shouldn't be the issue. As I said earlier, this is not a competition of who's more miserable. This has to be solved. And I think the difference is that Hamas deliberately targets civilians, whereas we do everything possible to minimize the collateral damage. And I think it's important to understand this component. And the third component you've mentioned yourself is, yes, we've been trying to facilitate aid coming in, and unfortunately it was stopped by Hamas attacking the cross points, allowing those lorries to enter to Gaza. So this is on these issues, and I think it's important to understand this component, that we truly have done everything possible to minimize the collateral damage. And I think much more people would have been injured and killed had we have done that. You're asking about the horizon, the political horizon and the solutions, and I think I've said it more than once. It's the interest of Israel to find a lasting solution with its neighbors. These are our immediate neighbors. We are bound to live one near each other. So this is not going to change. It's our interest, and in that respect, we shouldn't need any encouragement from the outside. We're happy to have it sometimes, but we shouldn't need it. It's our interest. As to what is the lasting solution, it has to be done after following a direct negotiations between us and Palestine. And I don't know what to say today, whether it's going to be a two-state solution or another solution. If I'm very, very honest with you, many people, this is still being debated internally in Israel. What is the right solution? And unfortunately, and here I would appreciate if this part will less be quoted. This is really more for you to know. Okay, so if
and what has Israel as a country done to make sure that they have minimum human deaths, casualties and people dying from the conflict. We've also seen, and I think we've seen it in all the media, that there's been a number of missiles fired from Gaza into Israel. And I would hate to think what would be the state of Jerusalem today, which is a holy city for us even as Christians, if they were not able to have the iron domes that were intercepting them, right? We've also seen that there are children that died, women, men, families on both sides. Israel obviously didn't have as many casualties as on the Palestinian side, but then the fact that Hamas, which is a terrorist group, has also been setting itself up in areas that are densely populated has resulted in the citizens being used as human shields and also being victims of the firing that happens from the side of Israel to Hamas. And of course, some of the Hamas missiles themselves have landed in their own country, in their own spaces. So we are also concerned that there was some some aid that was supposed to go into Gaza to help the people, and of course Hamas itself prevented that. And Israel was concerned because they also wanted to ensure that aid would flow easily. So what we are also happy is that today, while we meet, there's been a ceasefire. Everybody wants lasting peace and a lasting solution for Israel and Palestine because that's important. But while we were talking, Honorable Ivo Barra, who's the treasurer, raised a very big concern and point which I'd like her to articulate. But all in all, we are all praying for peace. On the side of Israel, you've had a casualty being a 5-year-old. So it's not a competition, but at the end of the day, children, women suffer in such conflicts. So we hope that we can find a permanent and lasting solution. And whether that is a one-state, two-state solution, there has to be a permanent solution so that we can move on and all of us can treasure the holy city of Jerusalem in its peaceful state, because right now everybody who wanted to visit the holy city obviously is not going to be able to go. The pilgrims that continuously go there. So maybe Ivo Barra will make a comment, and then especially when she touched on a very important point which I'd like her to put across on terrorism vis-a-vis Islam, and then His Excellency will speak, and then we can end it here. Okay, Kenya basically stays neutral, all right? But in the sense that, Kenya stands neutral, we don't take sides, all right? But at the end of the day, Kenya condemns violence, Kenya condemns terrorism. We have also been casualties of terrorism as a country. So there is no way that we will stand when we see terror being meted on any of our various partners. So the stand of the government or the country is something that only the state can put it out. But we sit on the National Security, the UN Security Council, and I believe we condemn all manner of violence as a country.
Thank you very much. My name is Eve Obar. Yes, I'm the treasurer of the Friendship. And first and foremost, I want to state that we as a country, or even within the East African region, we have been victims or casualties of terrorism attack. And we know the devastating effect of terrorism. I want now at this point also to appreciate the role that the Israelis have played in averting some of these terrorism attacks across the world now as well. So when we see in the social media in particular, or in the media, we see a narrative playing out that this could be a religious war, then we get very, very concerned. And I want to state that terrorism is not a religious war. It's nothing against the Muslims. We have coexisted in the world, I want to say in the world, with the Muslim brothers, even here in Kenya. And there is no way that this turns out to appear to be a Muslim attack. And therefore, I want to condemn the attack and the suffering of the innocent civilians who we've seen them in the media, and we want this to stop. We're happy when the ambassador clearly told us that there is a ceasefire that has been agreed between the two countries, and we want a lasting solution to this. We have very sentimental with Jerusalem, particularly the Christians, and that when we look at the history of the nations. So we are happy, Ambassador, that there has been a ceasefire and clearly state that it is not a religious war. is a terrorism attack, and we want to look at it as such and appreciate the relationship that we have had with them and the fight that they've had against terrorism in the whole world. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Has this war affected any businesses or manuals in this friendship since your vacation? Has it affected any?
Money. This is a new group. The friendship is a new group that we have started. It started during the corona times, and of course you know that it has been very difficult to move or even have engagements because of the corona. But it's not about money, it's about how we can support each other. The technology from Israel and what we can benefit from in our various constituencies. And that's what it is, because we know how far or what they've been able to do as a country in terms of technology, be it agriculture, be it security, be it in any of the areas. We've seen it, and it's not new to us. So that's what we are pursuing. It's not money as such. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Honorable Pasaris. Thank you, Treasurer of this Kenya-Israel Parliamentarian Friendship Group. This was very heartwarming to receive the delegation headed by Honorable Pasaris. Some of us, the members have joined us by the technology of Zoom on these circumstances of COVID-19. But again, I just want to say how heartwarming it was for me to accept the delegation here at our embassy. The solidarity that the Kenya-Israel Parliamentarian Friendship Group has expressed today for the people of Israel in these very difficult times that we have just passed means a lot to us. The friendship of this group, the friendship of Kenya, is very important for us. We do not take that for granted, and I think expressing this friendship in these difficult days was very, very meaningful for us. So I want to first and foremost thank the parliamentarian group that came today to this embassy to express this solidarity. We had a very open discussion inside, and I could assure you some tough questions were asked. And I think among friends and among families, you're more than entitled to ask tough questions. But I think it gave me the opportunity to give the description of what is happening in our part of the world in a manner that I think is more close to what truly happens. And unfortunately, one who sometimes follow only the media does not get the full picture and the perspective of what's truly happening in Israel. In the last 11 days, the Israeli civilians and the Israeli people were under a deliberate attack that was initiated by a terrorist group, Hamas, and other terrorist groups that control the Gaza Strip. This was a deliberate campaign as part of a very clear objective of this terrorist group that in their charter are very clear in their goal of seeing Israel being wiped off the map. This is, and everyone has to recognize it, this was the main reason for another wave of terrorism that was waged by this terrorist group. There was a more immediate trigger for this terrorist group to wage this wave in these specific times, and that has to do more to the internal Palestinian politics. The Hamas as a terrorist group wants to portray itself as the speaker of the Palestinian people on the account of the Palestinian Authority. So for them, during the holy month of Ramadan, during some of the Palestinians call the Nakba Day, for the Hamas it was a good opportunity to trigger another wave of terrorism against Israeli civilians. More than 4,400 missiles and rockets were fired against Israeli civilians in the last 11 days. They've caused a lot of damage. 13 people were dead and many others were injured. This is, as I said, a deliberate action by the terrorist organization to hit Israeli civilians. I do not know of any other government. I do not know of any other situation in the world where every responsible government wouldn't have acted as Israel. And what we have done in the last 11 days was to exercise our very basic right for self-defense, to defend our own citizens. And we have done it in a manner that was that we took very much into consideration how, on the one hand, we attack military targets of this terrorist group, and on the other hand, doing it in a manner that minimizes as much as possible the collateral damage. And what I think our friends in Kenya should understand, the Hamas is waging and is involved in two war crimes. The first being attacking Israeli civilians, but they're also, the other crime is that they're doing it from within dense populated areas in Gaza. The Hamas are housing their command and control centers. They're housing and putting their weapons, sheltering their weapons underneath hospitals, mosques, underneath residential areas. They're doing it deliberately. They're doing it deliberately because they understand that any action that will be taken by the Israeli Defense Forces will be done in a very populated area. But as I said, I think in the last few years we have managed to gain enough experience to utilize our technologies to exercise our right for self-defense, but again doing it in a manner that minimizes any collateral damage that might occur on the other side. And I think one of the, and I think Honorable Passaris, you have mentioned that, I think one of the reasons where we have seen damage also being minimized on the Israel side is because, thank God, we have managed to develop one of the most sophisticated systems, the Iron Dome, that is able that was able to intercept the missiles and rockets coming from Gaza. So I think we've taken all measures in order to try and restrain the situation on the ground, to try and deflame the situation on the ground, to try and de-escalate the situation on the ground. And as I said, this is what we've been engaged in the last 11 days. Sorry. Last night, a ceasefire was called upon. I hope this brings us to a situation where the situation on the ground will be de-escalated. We have no illusions that the Hamas, as a terrorist group, is changing its goals. We have no illusion that they might want to utilize this ceasefire to again repair all the damages and try to empower themselves again. So we are aware that it might be just it's just a matter of time until they decide to be engaged in another wave of war against Israeli civilians. So I think in that respect, it's very important, very crucial that the international community and our friends in Kenya would be very clear, as the government of Kenya has been, and I want to appreciate the government of Kenya, that was very clearly condemned the Hamas specifically as a terrorist organization attacking Israeli civilians, clarifying that there is no justification whatsoever, there could be no justification whatsoever for attacking civilians. So we appreciate the position of Kenya in that respect. And I think condemnation of this terrorist organization should continue, and we should find ways to join forces, all the free world, against these terrorist organizations in order to overcome these terrorist organizations. They have an impact also on Kenya, as the honorable members here have mentioned. Kenya also suffers from terrorist activities and from insurgencies. The only way to fight back is by making sure that the free world is united against this phenomenon. And I think Israel has proven in the past and will continue to prove in the future that we are a bold friend of Kenya in that respect, and of course in other fields of cooperation between our two countries.
Okay. I'm Hemba from Ebro TV. Just a concern.
Sorry, can you speak out? Speak loud.
I'm Hemba from Ebro TV. Just a concern. Maybe before a ceasefire that was actually brokered by the Egyptian government, where will this war actually translate to, considering the fact that some countries were already demonstrating? You saw even some parts in the country, Kenya, in Mombasa, they were actually holding demonstrations against the war. Where would this actually translate to if there was no ceasefire?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Could you repeat again?
Where will this translate to if at all we had no ceasefire, this war?
Well, we hope to have a ceasefire, but we hope to have a long ceasefire. And I think if we want to truly ensure that this ceasefire is not going just to be used by the terrorist organization to re-empower itself or to produce new missiles, to just find ways to repair the damages that occurred after the Israeli activity against their military targets. If this will be the case, then it's only a matter of time until we have another round of terrorism and that would attack Israeli civilians. But if, on the other hand, we have a very bold international community that is united against the terrorist organizations, if we have a Palestinian authorities that is able to regain control over the Gaza Strip, if we have a very clear message that no one will in any way be perceived as giving legitimacy to terrorism, I think we have a bigger chances that we could channel our energy to find a lasting solution between us and our neighbors, the Palestinians. And I want to again emphasize, we have no war with the Palestinians. This 11 days was not a war of Jews against Muslims, God forbid, but not a war of Israelis against the Palestinians. This was an exercise of a responsible government of self-defense when their civilians are being attacked against a terrorist organization. This has to be understood. In any way, any attempt to try and portray what happened in the last 11 days in a different manner, I think would be a betrayal for the truth.
Mheshimiwa Passaris, do you think maybe Kenya was also to be affected, because I understand Kenya also relies so heavily to the Israeli government? Do you feel that you are also to be affected in this kind of a war?
I mean, Israel is a very big partner for Kenya, and one of the agendas of the president is food security, and we know that Israel was amongst the countries that we were looking at to improve our food security, and they've got programs and projects that they're doing in the country. Of course, if their country is torn into full-blown war, it will delay things, all right? So we are happy for the ceasefire. We're hoping to get back on track. As the Kenya-Israel Friendship Group, we have so many plans ahead in terms of working with Israel, both in terms of legislation and improving the quality of our parliament as well, and also in terms of agriculture, livestock, technology, education. There's so many areas that we want to partner together and learn from each other and improve relations, trade relations between the two countries. So any war, whether here or there, would delay and derail any activity that is for economic empowerment. So we're happy about the ceasefire, and we pray that this ceasefire will be able to bring the Palestinian leadership, and not the terrorist group, the Palestinian leadership and the Israeli leadership on the table to discuss a lasting solution for peace in the Middle East.